Okay, now to a big concern for Arsenal ahead of the North London derby this weekend. Yeah, the injuries are piling up for Arsenal. Their captain Martin Odegaard suffered an ankle injury during Norway's win over Austria. Odegaard had to be helped from the pitch after injuring his ankle, with the Norway boss Ståle Solbakken saying after the game that it doesn't look good. Arsenal are ready without the suspended Declan Rice for Sunday's game against Tottenham. While speaking to Norwegian broadcaster TV2, Team Dr. Ola Sand gave a brief update saying this: Martin is doing quite well now. He got a small ankle sprain. Ankle sprains are difficult to deal with straight away, so we almost have to see how things go forward. We will examine him when we are back at the hotel. Right, let's speak to James about this then. Not great news for Arsenal fans is this, because it's not the first injury or suspension that they've had in the last few days. No, and in terms of Odegaard, this is a real concern for Arsenal considering the impact he's had over the course of the last 3 years he's been there since joining in 2021. He's been pretty much ever present in that Arsenal team. In fact, over the course of the last 2 seasons, and then the first few games of this season, he's missed just 4 Premier League matches, which shows just how important he's been to Arsenal. He's been in the PFA Team of the Year the past 2 seasons as well. We can look at how he compares to the other Arsenal midfielders and the other Arsenal players. You can see his impact when it comes to his goal-scoring ability. Third when it comes to goals and assists, and also crucially as well, we look at the bottom of the screen there, possession 1, and the final third pass into the box, he's the first, so we can see he's made such a big impact in terms of keeping Arsenal ticking in the middle of the park, also winning the ball back heart of the pitch and creating those chances. And without Declan Rice there this weekend as well, you have to fear for Arsenal. I think when you see Martin Odegaard at the start of this season, his stats haven't been that impressive in terms of there's not been any goals or assists. But when you watch him in the flesh, he's an unbelievable player. He is the heartbeat of that Arsenal team. Yes, you've got Saka there. Yes, you've got Havertz. You've got the brilliant centre-backs and the goalkeeper. But Martin Odegaard keeps that team ticking together. So Arsenal fans, fingers crossed that it's not too bad, because there's mixed reports there at this moment in time. Is it a twisted ankle? Could he recover in time for Sunday? That seems difficult, but whether or not it's a long-term injury, especially what's on the horizon, it is a concern. So no Rice, no Odegaard. How are you feeling about this? Fine, that was high pitch, wasn't it? It's going to be a real test of the manager, isn't it, and his resources. How do we think the squad's going to line up then? Well, there's a huge hole in Arsenal's midfield, potentially with Odegaard out. We wait to see what happens. We'll speak to Mikel Arteta on Friday, and he tends to not give a huge amount away in press conference. He'll be playing his cards close to his chest, but he'll be absolutely desperate to get Odegaard back at Arsenal's training ground today to assess that injury, but with Declan Rice suspended for the game, it doesn't mean that he's going to have to use his squad. We need to bear in mind the options Arsenal have in that area in the centre of the park, and Michael Moreno, the signing who came in a few weeks ago, he's out for a month due to an injury suffered on the training pitch. The 2 natural options would be Thomas Partey, Jorginho, who's been really effective for us when he's featured, but he's not played a single minute in the Premier League for Arsenal so far this season. There's also other potential options. Kai Havertz was signed initially mainly as a number 8, and he played there for a significant number of minutes there last season, but he is excelling now as a striker for Arsenal, so whether or not Arteta wants to tinker with him, Kai Havertz has been tinkered so much his career in terms of where he's playing across the pitch. So would you want to move from that number 9 position? The other couple options, you've got Leandro Trossard, he played in midfield there, probably better on the left, or is it as a false 9 and 2 left field options? Zinchenko has played there for Manchester City. He inverts as a fullback as well, so maybe he could slot in. And Jurgen Timber, this was spoken about in pre-season as well. Timber and Arteta spoke about the possibility of Timber playing in midfield. It's something he's done for Ajax, but bearing in mind his lack of minutes for Arsenal since joining the club, that would feel like a bit of a risk. So there are options there, but of course no options as good as Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice. Definitely not. I just wonder whether this, it's going to be a big challenge this for Arsenal, and the fact that he's signed so many players though that can play in different positions. This is where you need it, isn't it? You mentioned their Timbers, Zinchenko, these are guys in the defenders too. They can all play in different positions. And under Mikel Arteta, an Edu-19 of Arsenal's signings, of the 25 signs they've made, have been either goalkeepers, defenders, or defensively minded midfielders, so they've always been so desperate to ensure the foundation is there. Ben White played it in holding midfield when he leads, so I don't think he'll be looking at that now, but there are plenty of options there. But I think when you do have those superstars like Declan Rice, who can play as a number 6, as a box-to-box midfielder, as well as Martin Odegaard, who is virtually irreplaceable, then it is going to be difficult to find those options there. The one thing you would say is the Spurs midfield isn't necessarily that settled at this moment in time. You're not looking at that thinking that Arsenal will be overrun in that midfield. Without those two players, it means already at the start of this season, the concern for Arsenal fans will be after dropping points against Brighton, with Manchester City playing Brentford on Saturday. Arsenal going to that North London derby 5 points behind Manchester City heading into that game, so it already will feel like a must-win game, and you can see the fixtures that Martin Odegaard could potentially miss, the fixtures where Mikel Arteta may be looking to find those solutions. Atalanta away in the Champions League coming up, Manchester City away on September the 22nd. We're desperate to have Martin Odegaard back for that. And then you have more favourable ties in the EFL Cup and at home to Leicester. But then he'll be desperate to have a full complement of players there for the PSG game at home, the Emirates, on the 1st of October. Already it feels like there's a few question marks around his Arsenal team, mainly due to this availability issues. Well, thanks. Now I've seen the fixtures, I'm worried about them. Yeah, no, it's be fine. But yeah, it's not good timing though, is it? It's not, you'll be all right, you'll be okay. Well, you can see if they're going to be all right, because the North London derby will be the first of a Super Sunday double. The header all kicks off from 1 o'clock in the Premier League. Nolan, many question marks on Sancho as he continues to search a suitable club side to ply his trade and flourish. Let's just talk about Jadon Sancho before the international break was introduced to the crowd in that draw against Crystal Palace. He's joined on loan from Manchester United. I mean, you look at that performance he pulled off in the Champions League semi-finals against PSG. I mean, 35 ball carries, 12 successful dribbles. I think that's the most by any English player ever in the Champions League. If they can get the best out of him, and that's the big question, can they? How good a player might they have? No. He's the top player. We know he's the top player, but you've got, as you said, if they can, that's the big one. Can they get the best out of Jadon Sancho? How does Maresca do that? Well, he's going to Chelsea to play week in, week out. You've got to fit him in somewhere. Is he going to play week in, week out there? I don't think so, because they brought in players like Neto on the wing. They've still got Mudryk there. He could join the queue in that. That's what I mean. There's a whole list of players, and Nkunku. So I hope he does well anyway, because as you say, he's a talented boy. He went back to Dortmund last season, and he was outstanding for them. You're right, against PSG, I thought he caused the left back loads of problems. He's a talented boy, but where are you going to fit him into that? Cole Palmer wants to play in the 10. He does want to play in the 10. Just being assertive, Nolan. Yeah, obviously I respect my elders, but yeah, he wants to play in the 10. But Sancho wants to play side Evo. So, yeah, there's a lot of players in that position. Over to you, Mace. No, I was just going to ask you, is this his last chance at such a young age as well? Yeah, I think it is his last chance, I do, but he's got to be given the chances. You can't just, as any attacking player, you can't play one game and then come out and sit out for 2 games. How are you going to get your confidence? That could happen at Chelsea. This is the odd thing, is you ain't going to get too many chances. That's what I mean. Because if you don't play well, if I'm the manager, I'm going, right, I've got to go Neto now. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to get 6, 7, 8, 9 chances because of the wingers they've got, and that's going to be a problem. I think he does well. I really do. No, I hope he does. Of course I do. I think he went back to Dortmund, and he showed what a player he was, and it was embarrassing for Ten Hag to be looking on, watching him play in the Champions League final. You know, the boy did play well. Do you think, though, that he done well at Dortmund because they accepted him the way he is? Unfortunately, the modern-day manager now, it's not just setting a team up, putting them on the pitch. Sometimes you have to put an arm around and babysit some of the players, and I think he needs special attention. If you show him the love, I'm sure he will pay you back on the field. But that's a good point about, is he going to play the amount of games that he wants to? Because as May said, they love to rotate at Chelsea. They certainly do, we shall see. And just a quick one from you, Tim, as a former manager, just in terms of what's going on behind the scenes at Chelsea, because that was the story dominating the international break from a Chelsea point of view. The rift in the ownership between Behdad Eghbali and Todd Boehly. Todd Boehly, despite, it's a 12.5% stake, but he's very much the front man. He wants to buy them out. There seems to be a difference of opinion. There was over the future of Mauricio Pochettino, it sounded like Boehly very much wanted to keep him. McNally had very different ideas. In terms of how this plays out, you think back to the days of Kroenke and Usmanov at Arsenal. That didn't go well. The club drifted for around about a decade. Is there a worry the same could happen at Chelsea if this isn't sorted out? I think it's really important that Maresca don't use this as an excuse. You know, there's nothing to do with him, whatever goes on at the top. He's got the job, they've backed him. They probably, I would say, got one of the strongest squads in the Premier League at the moment. Yeah, it's a bit of a mismatch, you know, it's unbalanced position-wise. But he's certainly got the tools to work with, they give him that. Don't use it as an excuse when things start turning bad. I'm not saying he will. I think he's got a magnificent opportunity for doing very little. He's got Leicester, who had the best players in the Championship, got promotion, and then he's gone to one of the biggest clubs in the Premier League, serial winners of the Premier League as well in Chelsea. He's got a magnificent opportunity here with wonderful players, certainly in attacking areas. I hope he gets it right for Chelsea's sake, and I think you can't look above him and use excuses. And I don't think it's anything to do with him. Just in terms of how the ownership is looking at Chelsea at the moment, we don't too often use pie charts on Soccer Saturday, but we got one today. Clear Lake Capital with that 61.6%. Todd Boehly, as I mentioned, 12.8%. Then comes Mark Walter as well in this on 12.8%. I mean, Merce, how is this resolved? Because one outcome stylemates. We have a kind of unhappy alliance that continues in terms of how the club is run. But then we question, well, who's Maresca taking the lead from? Who's he taking directions from? How do you see this being resolved? I don't know, but it needs to be resolved. I think, we hear so much, Chelsea fans, what's happening in the background when it's all about what's on the pitch. But I agree with what Nola says. Just got to worry about what's going on the pitch. Yeah, because if they're flying, it's not. Yeah, it's flying, it doesn't matter. But it needs to. I still don't know the plan. Jackson's there till 2003. You think they know the plan? No, I don't. I think it's a bit of a guessing game at the moment, buying a lot of young players. Hopefully, if Jackson scores 25 goals in the next season, they'll sell him. It's got till 2033. But that's the whole idea of putting these players. If Palmer becomes unbelievable and keeps on doing what he's doing, he'll be a £100 million player. They will sell him for £100 million. That's how it works. They're not giving these players all these to run their contracts out in 63 years' time, right? We're going to take a break. Chelsea do not know how to keep it quiet, do they now? Right, even during an international break, Chelsea just can't keep themselves out of the headlines with reports of a rift between co-owners Behdad, Eghbali and Todd Boehly surfacing. We are here on set to discuss the latest developments at the bridge. Goodness me. So go on then, what's happened? You would ask, why Chelsea in the news? Well, there's always something happening at Chelsea on and off the pitch. The background to all this is that obviously, for 20 years, Chelsea were owned by Roman Abramovich. He effectively ran it as a family business. Everybody knew that he was in charge. And although his ownership of the club was very controversial, as far as Chelsea fans were concerned, the vast majority of them loved Roman Abramovich and the club won lots of trophies. Now, just over 2 years ago, we had the takeover. Roman Abramovich was forced to sell Chelsea because he was sanctioned by the UK government. And if you remember, the face of the winning consortium that came out on top in that takeover battle was Todd Boehly, this American businessman who put together this consortium. He became the new owner of Chelsea. But of course, he was not 100% the owner of Chelsea because there was a consortium and 62% of the money for the takeover was provided by a private equity firm in America called Clear Lake Capital. And the face of Clear Lake English football has been Behdad Eghbali. Now, to begin with, Todd Boehly, even though he only owns around 13% of the shares in Chelsea, he was the face of the takeover. He was the sporting director. If you remember 2 summers ago, that famous transfer window when Chelsea seemed to be buying so many players, he was the one calling the shots. He was the one running the club. Now, you have to say that initially, that first year of American ownership, things didn't go particularly well. Chelsea were in the headlines again for, lots of different reasons. So last year, Todd Boehly stepped back from being the main man and Behdad Eghbali and Clear Lake Capital took over the running of the club. And that's why we've seen so many changes, new head coaches come in, this controversial strategy in the transfer market. buying young players, giving them long-term contracts. That's all been Clear Lake. And effectively, Todd Boehly has been sidelined. Now, last night, we had this report from Bloomberg, a very well-respected financial news service. And what they reported is that both sides, so Eghbali and Todd Boehly, were considering buying each other out. And the relationship between the two men had deteriorated, and they no longer saw eye to eye on quite a few things, like recruitment, why the team was underperforming, why more progress hadn't been made on redeveloping Stamford Bridge. And for that reason, it looked like one of them was going to leave. Were either side perhaps considering selling up? Would we see a split between Behdad Eghbali on the one hand and Todd Boehly on the other? Now, the information we have is that Behdad Eghbali and Clear Lake Capital, who own 61.5% of Chelsea, have absolutely no intention of selling up. They are not going anywhere. They are totally committed to Chelsea. So if one person is going to leave, from their perspective, it would be Todd Boehly. And if Todd Boehly wants to sell his shares, or if anybody else wants to sell their shares in Chelsea, then Behdad Eghbali and Clear Lake Capital are willing to sit down and talk with them. And potentially come to a deal whereby they would buy even more shares in Chelsea than they already own. Oh, okay, I hope I explained that. Yeah, it's quite a complicated story for a Saturday morning, but I did my best. Very understandable. So there has, what it looks like, been a fallout. If they can't work things out and shares need to be sold if Todd Boehly leaves, does that seem like something that would happen more realistically over Eghbali? Or what sort of does happen next? I think if one party is going to leave, it's going to be him. It's going to be more likely that it's Todd Boehly. Although having said that, our information is that Todd Boehly is still committed to Chelsea. The key question is, have the two men fallen out? Now, my reading of the situation is that they were never best friends, they weren't best buddies. They were very, very successful businessmen who came together to buy Chelsea. And I think their relationship, from the few times that I've met both of them together, what came across is that they were very businesslike. I didn't get the sense that they were hanging out with each other and going out every night to dinner together. They were in this for business. Now, obviously, they're both very successful, very rich people who've made a lot of money in business, and they've got their own ideas about how businesses should be run. I think I wouldn't stick my neck out and say that they've fallen out or they're enemies, but my reading of the situation is that their relationship is professional and businesslike and cordial, but no more than that. The race is on, the battle line drawn for who becomes the best footballer without the ever-presence of Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi hugging the list. Okay, the shortlists for the men's and women's Ballon d'Or were announced last night. As always, a few big omissions, a couple of surprise names, but lots and lots of interest. Well, Nolan is here to talk us through it. Nolan, we're going to focus on the men's Ballon d'Or first. Give us the headlines. Well, the big headline is from an English perspective. 6 players nominated from the 30-man shortlist. You have Phil Foden from Manchester City, Declan Rice after his first season at Arsenal after that £100 million move, and also England's run to the Euro 2024 final. Harry Kane, the England skipper. Jude Bellingham, probably the best candidate in terms of most likely to win of the English candidates. Bukayo Saka and Cole Palmer. But for Cole Palmer, it's been quite a remarkable rise over the course of the last 12 months. The voting period started on the 1st of August last year when he was still a Manchester City player. But what he's done since then has been absolutely incredible. A remarkable debut campaign at Chelsea, culminating in a goal he scored against Spain in the final of the Euros. Harry Kane, when it came to the Euros, maybe a little bit underwhelming when it came to his performances for England. But that's not the case when it comes to Bayern Munich. His first season at the German Giants, he scored 44 goals in all competitions in his first campaign in Germany. And as I mentioned, I think the most likely English candidate to be victorious is Jude Bellingham after what he did with club and country. His first season at Real Madrid, scored 23 goals in all competitions. They won 4 trophies as well. Who could forget the overhead kick against Slovakia in the knockout stages of the Euros? In terms of Premier League interest, we're really well represented. 10 players from the Premier League, 4 Arsenal, 4 Manchester City. It doesn't like Rodri, that man there is probably from the Premier League contingent, the most likely to be successful. Fresh from Manchester City, winning 4 Premier League titles in a row. And he won the Euros with Spain as well. I think Jude Bellingham would probably have a slightly better hope if England won the Euros. Unfortunately, he didn't. That means Rodri is probably just ahead of him at this moment in time. Well, I mean, those are the players, but it's just one goalkeeper making the 30-man shortlist, also coming from an English club though. Yeah, and who could argue against this? Emi Martinez. He was nominated last year for it after Argentina won the World Cup. Nominated once again, Argentina winning the Copa America. Aston Villa reaching the Champions League for the first time in 41 years. They reached the semi-finals of the Conference League as well. He's also nominated for the best goalkeeper. And you think being the only goalkeeper in the main draw for the Ballon d'Or means he's almost certainly going to win best goalkeeper again, which he did last year. So, Emi Martinez, Aston Villa fans absolutely love him. Fans love to hate him, but you can't deny brilliant goalkeeper. So those are the people included. But as we mentioned in the introduction, some big omissions as well. Two very big omissions. There they are. Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi for the first time since 2003. Neither of these men have been nominated for the Ballon d'Or. And what it means is because of the success they've had over the course of the last 16 seasons, it's only twice from the last 16 seasons they've not won it. That was when Luka Modric won it in 2018, fresh off the back of Croatia reaching the World Cup final. And then Karim Benzema won it in 2022 as well. So it does mean this year we can get a winner for the first time, a brand new winner for the Ballon d'Or. It does look like it's going to be between Jude Bellingham, Rodri, Vinicius Jr. Could be the one to get over the line. But it's going to be fascinating to see because it is very open, unlike sometimes we saw it over the course of the last 16 years when one of these men have been nailed on to win it. Okay, let's turn our attention to the Women's Ballon d'Or then. Can you run us through the nominees? Yeah, so the voting period started on the 1st of August last year, so that means we include what happened at the Women's World Cup. England reaching the final, just being edged out by Spain in that final, so we've got 3 contenders here from an English perspective. Lucy Bronze, who won the Champions League with Barcelona as well last summer before joining Chelsea. Lauren James at Chelsea, fresh from winning 5 straight WSL titles with them in Emma Hayes' final season in charge. And Lauren Hemp as well. So 3 English contenders, though you think a Spanish player may get their hands on it after winning the World Cup in August. So that's the end of October when we'll find out. End of October in Paris. But we want to hear what you think. Can you get involved? Give us your top 3 for this year's competition. Men, women, or both.
Cristiano Ronaldo has voiced his opinion on Manchester United to Rio Ferdinand, and one of the things that he said was, "You can't say that you can't win the Premier League at Manchester United." What is your view of that? And can Manchester United win the Premier League? He said that Manchester United can't win the Premier League. He said that you said that. No, he said this. Have you read the article? Very well. So, he's far away from Manchester, so everyone can have. And it's entitled to have an opinion. It's okay. Are you confident then that the club are on the right track? Because obviously there's been a couple of difficult results and a row of difficult performances. There's pressure building all the time at this place. So, are you confident things are going the right way? We will see where we are in May next year. It's very early in the season, and it's about winning trophies, be as high as possible in the league, do everything to win every game, and then we will see in May where we are, and then judge. When there's a lot of noise, obviously the international break, how does it impact you? Do you block it out? How do you deal with it?
It doesn't impact me. I know in the process where we are, what we have to do, where we are going. I have said before, we are still in the transition period. We have to integrate a lot of young players also in the team. We are still dealing with injuries. We have to bring the injuries back in the team. And before anyone thinks about excuses, no, we have to win every game. I know that, the team knows this, and it doesn't matter who is available. We will focus on every game, and have in every game the mindset we have to win. I spoke to Diogo Dalot this afternoon, and he said there was a frustration in him and among some of the players, that what you've been able to show at the start of this season isn't truly reflective of what's going on in the training pitches every single day. He believes that what's happening here at the club now is in a good place and that things are better than they've been in recent times. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like the team are really onto something now and that will show in time in the results? Of course, when you see the scores, no one is happy, but also players have a very good sense of the process, of the quality of the process, and I agree with him. And also when you analyze the games, all the games so far, we are in a good direction. But also, as is normal in the transition period and in the period where you have to build a team, we have to build a team, we have to improve, we have to step up. What do you think is different then that Diogo is feeling and that you're seeing that gives you that belief that this season can be better than what's gone before? We have good characters, you feel the team spirit, and now is about to get the patterns and routines in. Once we have that, everyone sees the quality we have on the training pitch.
Was it a good performance, many would ask? Were they vintage today? No, absolutely not. They had to really struggle. A lot of teams are going to struggle when they go to Bournemouth, and they are going to get better as the season goes. I think from a right-back position, they had a problem all game with Kerkez until they took him off. He's not a right-back, he's a centre-back. And you look at how you get a balance in the team. I don't know when Reece James is going to be fit, but if you could see Reece James playing at right-back in that team and what he would give you would be astronomical to where they are now, but it's just a case of getting him on the pitch. You start to get a bit of chemistry, players playing together, and more often it will get better. I've said it before and I'm going to sound like a complete bore. It's going to be so hard to keep everybody happy. That's my problem with it. Players like Neto, who I'm a massive fan of, he played in the first half, doesn't quite work out, he gets taken off. How are you meant to get confidence and get that feel in the team if you're never really going to be given that trust? He's at least separated the squad into the players that he wants to work with and the players that he isn't going to work with and said, at least I've got this core of players. So he's taken the first step towards trying to fix that. Is the problem you're talking about that even within that slightly tighter squad that there are players who want to do the same thing? Yes, there are 4 wingers that could come off the bench, which is absolutely fine because people might say they won you the game in the end, making your subs, making your changes. But I just feel when you've got so many players vying for the same position, it's not always great. You don't see people coming on for Mo Salah after half a game because he's so important. It's just a case of getting, I suppose we've all got to get used to this. Is it going to work? Only time will tell. The narrative is going to go on all season with this Chelsea side and the players they've got. It's just be interesting to see what the success is, and they're doing something completely different to what I've ever understood with football. I'm not a big fan of it. I think exercising players and say, you're going to go to a different part of the training ground, and do you not think they're going to still get in contact with the players and Chilwell, being told he's out and now I hear he could be back into the squad? It just doesn't create a very good environment, I don't think. You can't just say to a player you're not going to be involved, especially if they're good guys and they train well, because you never know when you need someone. Today they could have done with a right back, but he might have been a player that's not in that squad. But having said all of that, Maresca can only work with the squad of players that he's gone into, as big as that is, and as small as he's tried to make it. Can you see his footprint on that team? If I'm really honest, I don't think after today I'm personally any wiser to seeing patterns and a vision of how they want to play. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think he'll need time and hopefully he gets time. I'm sure he will. He knew what he was coming into, this large squad atmosphere, and to be honest with you, however you think you're going to deal with it, I don't think you'll know until you get in it. I think being in a dressing room with 40 other players, I cannot begin to imagine the dynamic and how you stay task-focused on what you're trying to achieve. But I think today Maresca alluded to it post-match about having to dig deep, win duels. First half Bournemouth were all over them, picking up every second ball, winning their duels. That's what Bournemouth do, but they've also got that sprinkling of quality. But that's what Bournemouth do every game. Bournemouth have gone from the euphoria of beating Everton in the last minute, 3-2 before the international break, to then playing to get today against a good Chelsea side and losing at home. So I think on balance, Chelsea take a bit of what Bournemouth do, move it forward, but have I seen a pattern yet emerging of how they want to play? Not particularly, but they've got good players, so I think things will start to emerge in the coming weeks.